Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about kind of the left and the right and how it's being portrayed that the country, the United States is the country I'm talking about, guys, is so divided in belief and in what we want, etc. And so I'll start off with this saying, I went and voted early this past week for my selection in the election, President of the United States and the other offices that are up for election. And I live in East Texas. I live in a town that is a fairly large town that's between two fairly larger towns and about a couple hours away from a massive city. And I say this because that's what most of the world is like in America, is that most people live in towns like mine. The city population has grown, and now this urban population does outnumber the rural population, but the majority of the voting public lives in a place similar to where I live. And I'll say this, there were men and women of all ages in line, of all nationalities, and, people that look like me, people that look very different. And when I'm standing in line, I'm thinking, this is a jury of my peers, right? Because you think if you get in trouble with the law, you're going to have a jury of peers determine what's going to happen to you. So whenever I'm in a group of people that are in my county and doing what we were doing, that's who those people are. So in that, I would like to say that it's as pleasant as I thought it would be. No one was talking political nonsense. Everyone was there just happy that everyone was participating in the vote. In Texas, we show our IDs, which should be a simple law across the entire country. The only people that would not want you to show an ID to vote are people that are trying to do something illegal and false. And what we need to get back to in this country, honestly, is just what makes sense, the logical thoughts that make sense. In the world in general, too, it's not that difficult to get along if we think about what rules we live by. So the United States is a Christian nation. It was based on Christian values, but the majority of the world religions share the same values. So what I'm going to do in this video today is I'm going to read the 10 Commandments from Exodus, where they are in the Bible, and this is a King James Version. I'm also going to read the Bill of Rights, what the Bill of Rights says from our U.S. Constitution, because some of the newer generations have never read either one of these two documents. And a lot of the younger generation that's portrayed on YouTube and Snapchat and Twitter and X or whatever you want to call this noise, act like they don't appreciate what the Constitution is and they don't understand what it is. However, most people that don't live in America understand how valuable our Constitution is. And one of the best suggestions I ever heard, it was from a black comedian. I can't think of his name right now, but he said, anyone that doesn't like America, if you hate the United States of America, just get you a plane ticket and travel. And he said, travel for about 6 weeks. When you get back to the United States, you'll kiss the ground. And he wasn't talking about traveling to, Western countries. He was talking about travel the world and see what the world really is. And then you'll understand how beautiful the country that we have and the Constitution and the rights that we have are. So I'll say that, and I'll say this next. I don't like politicians, okay? Voting for politicians is like selecting the best foot fungus, all right? They're awful all around. Typically, most people feel like they're picking the lesser of two evils. And generally, it's such an ugly situation. By the time you vote, you just like, let's vote and get this over with so all these people will shut up until they want our attention again. And so I'll use the Democrat thought process is currently they don't talk or care about the people that they represent until it's election year. Okay? And the Republicans, same thing. They loosely hold on to what they promise, but they really kick it up in the election year. And I'll use the borders, for example. For the last 10 years, since Obama left, since Obama's last term began, which Trump was in office after that, the border of our country has been too porous to the point that people have flooded our cities, and now we have Venezuelan gangs holding apartment complexes hostage. We have American college students who are going to try to expand their mind to be doctors and professionals to help our country do what it needs to do and lead the world in the way that we do, that are being raped and killed by illegal people. And they call them immigrants. They're not immigrants. They came here illegally. They didn't come through the legal process. Someone that comes through the immigration process legally is an immigrant. People who come across the border illegally, those are called invaders. And they have been called invaders for millennia. So it's not a new term. It should not be confusing to anyone. And either you live by the rule of law or you don't. So that's what I come back to when it comes to these things. And the arguments are quite ridiculous. So if you point out certain things that are evil with one person, the instant response is, well, your person, blah, blah, blah. But remember, we're talking about politicians. And I had one such back and forth this past week. I don't put anybody on the pedestal but Jesus Christ. He is my Savior. He is the God that I worship. He is the only being that I will put on a pedestal. And in my comment, there's a rush comment right back. Well, don't put Trump on the pedestal. And I literally said, I did not mention Trump in any of this. I am simply giving you the facts on this person based on what was asked. And so at the end of the day, that's the issue. People are so hung up on wanting to argue about the different fungus that they would prefer that they don't want to shut up and listen. And that's going to be the title of this video. Unity is easy if you shut up and listen. So here's the thought process on that. When this type of government that we have was set up and ran in Rome, and the issue that you had in Rome was that in the beginning there were warriors, statesmen, farmers, landowners, people who worked in the cities, merchants, all that. Those people became the politicians, and they best knew how to run the city to make it feasible and functional. Okay? But as decades and centuries went by, what happened is those people were no longer participating in the government. What happened was you ended up with politicians who were lifelong politicians who had done nothing else in life but be a politician. And those people are useless to people like us. And when I say people like us, I mean any human being that works a job, any human being that is married or has children, any human being that has bills, any human being that has a home, any human being that pays taxes. That's what I mean by us. If you're not in those groups, I'm not talking to you. But if you are in those groups, I am talking to you, because we've let the people who do not fall into those groups start chiming in on everything that we do, which makes no sense. If a person lives in their mom's basement, they can't tell me about rent. They can't tell me about mortgage. They can't tell me about paying taxes. Okay? If someone has a degree that's not in finance, that's not in business, then they can't tell me how statistics matter in finance and business. The reason I say this is I get my information from a place that is of wisdom and value. If a person doesn't know how to dress and what to look like and what to be like in their own skin, they can't tell me about anything. That's simple. What I've seen over the last 2 years is people get enraged about things that do not matter. It does not matter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read one more list before I get into the 10 Commandments. And this video may run a little long, so just hang in there. Because I think if you listen to this, you may have some thoughts that may be beneficial to you the next time somebody of some harpy that's, got their preferred foot fungus wants to yell at you and scream at you about how their fungus is better than the one you've picked. Okay? So let's talk about first 6 things that the Lord hates. And this is coming from the Christian religion, and most religions of the world have the same understanding around morals and values. So if you're not a Christian, your values may be tied loosely to this or may be exactly like this. But in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16 through 19, and this version isn't King James, this is from the ESV. It says, verse 16 starts, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are abomination to him. The Lord God hates, and this is our creator. In the Christian point of view, this is our creator. This is the person that owns the world and everything in it, including us. Okay? He hates haughty eyes. He hates a lying tongue. He hates hands that shed innocent blood. He hates a heart that devises wicked plans. He hates feet that make haste to run to evil. He hates a false witness who breathes out lies. It's twice lies have been in the post here, or in this verse rather. And he hates one who sows discord among brothers. So think about politicians. And think about what your politicians do, your foot fungus of your choice. Do they have haughty eyes? Do they have a lying tongue? Do they shed innocent blood? Do they have hearts that devise wicked plans? Wicked should suggest anything that's against the laws of your country, or what you believe and what you pay taxes for. That should be wicked plans. So not securing a border, allowing people to come in and victimize citizens who pay taxes and elect officials to protect them from that, that's wicked plans. Innocent blood, that's abortion. That's college kids getting killed by invaders that don't belong here. Okay, that's innocent blood. Feet that make haste to run to evil. Supporting Iran so they can kill the people that live near them. False witnesses who breathe out lies. So here's what I'd suggest. When you're talking about your preferred method and your preferred version of foot fungus, are they lying when they say someone else is lying? Or are they truthful in that? And is their situation what it is because they've never done anything? Or have they been a doer? So now let's look at the King James Version, and this is King James Bible. This is Exodus chapter 20, and this is when God, and if you're not a Christian, God himself gave the 10 Commandments to Moses. And the 10 Commandments were on 2 tablets. The first tablet had 4, and that was how people on those 4 commandments told people how they should react and respond to God and what the expectation was there. And on the right tablet had 6, and on that tablet it had the expectation of how people were to treat other people. Okay, so let's get into that, and we'll start here, chapter 20, verse 1. It says, And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. So he's talking to Moses now. He's just freed the nation of Israel, so the Jews, from the Egyptians. They had been slaves for years, decades, maybe a little over a century and a half, I think. Maybe longer, because the one common thread in Jewish history was enslavement, okay, and mass murder. They've been slaughtered and enslaved for centuries. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought ye out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's verse 3. Verse 4 says, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water underneath the earth. And so here's the thing about the 10 Commandments. People shorten them so they fit on things. They shouldn't be shortened. These are God's words, so they should be taken exactly as it is on the page. A lot of people want to go back and forth about translations, but if you go back to the Hebrew, the Aramaic, and the Greek, you'll see that these are very tightly on what was said. The 5th verse says, Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. So if people hate God, then their children aren't safe, neither are their children's children, neither are their children's children's children. Why? Because God is a vengeful God. Verse 6 says, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So if you want to be okay in life, you keep God's commandments. Verse 7 says, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. So this doesn't just mean cursing. This means if you're a false preacher, or if you talk down about God because you think your God is better, those things are keeping the Lord God's name, or taking his name rather, in vain. Verse 8 says, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. A lot of Christians miss this. There's a lot of back and forth, but the language is pretty clear. Verse 9 says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Verse 10 says, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. So verse 10 right there makes it very clear what day of the week is the Sabbath, and that is Saturday. It's the last day of the week. Not Sunday, Saturday. There's a lot of argument that goes back and forth on that, but think, Jesus is the perfect example that God gave us. He was the Bible walking around on earth. When Jesus was crucified on the cross on Friday, he rested on the Sabbath, which was Saturday, and he rose from the dead on Sunday, right? So he kept the Sabbath holy even through the crucifixion process. All right, so there's plenty of history of that. Also in the New Testament where the apostles taught. They had church meetings on Sunday because they did the business on Sunday. They preached on the Sabbath, and that was it. It was a day of rest where they preached. Had some people that read Catholic books and the Catholic versions of the Bible reach out to me on that before, and they were like, well, it says here they're doing the work of the church on Sunday. I was like, yes, because it's not the Sabbath. You do the work of the office work and those type things on Sunday because it's a work day. So in that, and based on what the Bible tells us, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are work days. Saturday is the Sabbath. And here's verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day, wherefore the Lord blessed that Sabbath day and hallowed it. So that means when Constantine, in 313 or 613 AD, whatever year it was, he was a pope. And I don't really study popes that much, but he was the one that changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. People argue about that too. It's documented. It's historical. You can go back in the Catholic Church history and see when he did it as well. And there's tons of secular books that spoke about that as well. But I'll read verse 11 again. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day, wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. The 12th verse is, honor thy father and mother, that the days may be long upon the land which thee the Lord God hath giveth thee. The 13th verse is, thou shalt not kill. In some translations it says, thou shalt not murder. It's my opinion that thou shalt not murder is correct, which is lying in wait, but thou shalt not kill is a fair enough rule for most. 14 is, thou shalt not commit adultery. 15 is, thou shalt not steal. Verse 15, thou shalt not steal. Verse 16, thou shalt not bear false witnesses against thy neighbor. So don't tell the lies. Verse 17 says, thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is in thy neighbor's. He's talking about his ass, he's talking about his donkey, not his backside. Okay? That's verse 17. Verse 18 says, and all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise and the trumpet and the mountain smoking, and the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. Because Moses was speaking with God, and it sounded like a hurricane. And then they said unto Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. Because they knew if they heard God's voice, that they would die. So there's the 10 Commandments from the Bible. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Constitutional Bill of Rights, which I think is second. The Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights is second in value in my mind to the Bible. There is no other documents on the face of the earth in my mind that are more important than the Holy Bible, number one, and the Constitution of the United States and everything included within, including the Bill of Rights. Okay? I'm American. I'm a Christian. That makes sense. If you're American and that's not the way you see it, then you've got a problem. That's my opinion, but you've got a problem. Because if the Constitution, even if you're not a Christian, the Constitution isn't the most important thing in your mind, and it should not matter race, sex, anything else. If you look at the rest of the world based on your race or your sex and see how people are treated and see how they are treated here, it's vastly, vastly different. If you travel with your body and go to other places, not with your mouth and not on the internets, but you actually travel and go see the rest of the world, you will learn about those places. What I found most entertaining recently was there's a documentary that's been released about a bunch of Americans that are black that moved to Africa, and they were like, y'all come home. And they got a very rough education because they moved there before they traveled there. Okay, so they should have traveled there and stayed a while. When they moved there, they found out that they were just being victimized by the entire country that they moved to. They were paying all these fees and these tariffs and everything else. And the woman said on the documentary, she goes, America was so much better than this. We were being treated awful here. We've been treated like slaves. That's what she said. Because she was having to pay 4 and 5 times for everything. And the only thing they were interested in was their money. So if the Constitution is not important to you, you need to ask yourself why. And before you change your mind or before you decide that that's your Stoic point of view, you need to travel the world a little bit and see what's going on. But here's the point. There were many people that did not like the Constitution of the United States and did not like the fact that we were writing the Constitution of the United States when we were doing it. There's an entire book here dedicated to that. For people that can't read cursive, I'll read that for you. The title is The Anti-Federalist, and this is selected writings and speeches from the period of time the Constitution was written. And you'll see this, you'll think, man, these people were loyalists to England and they should all have been killed as traitors. But the actual thought process is there was some thought going into some of these responses. So even the Constitution of the United States at the time where we were being taxed at a point that we thought was beyond what we can handle, which now it's so much worse. These are some of the quotes that were said inside of some of these writings. This government will destroy the state governments and swallow the liberties of the people. Patrick Henry said that. He was a great American. This is from Cato, which predates America. Experience ought to teach you that when man is at the head of an elective government, invested with great powers and interested in his own re-election, in what circle appointments will be made, an imperfect aristocracy, bordering on monarchy may be established. Cato was dead on. Because free countries hate monarchies. That's why we're free. And what did we do in the last 20 years? We decided we're going to pay these politicians, whether they're in office or not, whether they show up for work or not, we're going to pay them for life, creating a new monarchy, a new set of royals, which is illegal and we shouldn't have done it. It was wrong. But what Cato said there is fantastic. An imperfect aristocracy bordering on monarchy may be established. That's exactly what happened in 250 years. So there's some arguments here to be made because we didn't put term limits and we didn't say these people will not be paid when they're out of office. The expectation for the forefathers is when you became a politician or a foot fungus, after you served your term, then you were to return back to the public as a citizen. Okay, you weren't supposed to stay a fungus for life, and you definitely weren't supposed to become some type of noble. The federal farmer said, should the general government think it politic, and some administration, if not all, probably will, to look for support in the system of influence of the government, will take every occasion to multiply the laws and officers to execute them, meaning the government's continually making new laws, and expanding jobs and adding heads because it's becoming this huge bureaucratic machine that cannot be sustained and is ever growing, right? So it never reaches the end of the extra ads Trump said yesterday in a video when he talked to Joe Rogan, he said that when you're president, you basically appoint between 3,000 and 10,000 people to jobs. 3,000 and 10,000 people. And then you think in Barack Obama's second term, he hired something like 40,000 IRS agents. We already had IRS agents. He added 40,000 to it. And then they armed him up and gave him a bunch of ammo too. So that was very strange. The next power of the judicial will be to enable them to mold the government into almost any shape they please. That's what Brutus said, and they killed him for it. William Shakespeare wrote about that in the story of Caesar. Brutus was his best friend, and he was trying to limit the powers of the government, and they killed him for it. He was stabbed something like, I don't know, everyone stabbed him multiple times, and I think there was 50 people there, so he was pincushioned rather harshly. So there are those. So you can see there's not bad thoughts in that. There are some logics to what's being said there. But what we're going to read now is the Bill of Rights under the U.S. Constitution. And I have my nice leather copy here of the Constitution of the United States. I think everybody should have a copy in their house. There are small copies too that will fit in your pocket that you can get that have the highlights. And I'll tell you what the articles of the Constitution are. And if you read through the articles of the Bill of Rights, it talks about how people are supposed to be paid, the free state, what it's supposed to be, and how that is laid out. So let's go through it. Article 1 of the Constitution is, after the first enumeration required of the first article of the Constitution, there shall be one representative for every 30,000 until the number shall amount to 100. After which the proportion shall be so regulated by the Congress, they shall be not less than 100 representatives, not less than one representative for every 40,000 persons, unto the number of representatives shall amount to 200. After which the proportion shall be so regulated by Congress. This is talking about the head count in Congress. That there shall not be less than 200 representatives and no more than one representative for every 50,000. Article 2 under the Constitution says, no law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives should take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. That's something that needs a bit more oversight. They always pay themselves more. They haven't elected once, in my memory, not to pay themselves more. Article 3 said, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to the petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's article number 3. Article number 4 is, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's written in plain English right there. Plain English. I say English because people say that sometimes. Article 4. Article 5 is, no soldier shall, in a time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So what people don't know is, in colonial days, England would force citizens of the United States colonies, so the colonies before the United States, would force them to house soldiers. And those soldiers basically had the power of law at their back, and they did a lot of awful, evil things, a lot of times to children. Article 6 is, the right of the people should be secure in their persons, their houses, their papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon principal cause supported by oath of affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So that's Article 6 in the original writing of the Bill of Rights. And here's the point. George Bush's Patriot Act violates that still to this day. This is also why if a cop pulls you and says they want your license, you don't have to give it to them if they don't tell you that they expect that you're guilty of a crime. If you're guilty of a crime or caught in the act of a crime and they ask you for identification, you have to supply it. But if you're not, then you don't. And so typically if a cop gets enraged on that and tries to slap cuffs or everything, so may say, resisting arrest, yada, yada, get a good attorney, and you might get a decent paycheck out of that cop, because that is against the law. Article 7 says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militaria or militia, when it's in actual service or time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself, nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That just compensation piece is a bit lacking. My family got our land taken from us in the 50s, and were moved. There's a documentary that's was made at the time. Aunt Margaret did a lot of speaking on that because she was a child when that happened. It was called Displaced. And right now in Texas, the government's trying to take a good bit of land from people. So that is something that I think needed more stipulations around, because I think it happens too often. Article 8 says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right of a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall be or should have been or shall been committed. Man, that's a difficult way to read that. Which the district shall have been previously ascertained by law. So basically they have to say where it is so the jury can be selected from that space. And to be informed of the nature of the cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. That's where they get the Miranda rights. You have a right to attorney. Anything you say you can and will be used against you in court of law. If you can't afford an attorney, yada, yada, yada. We've all heard them. Article 9 says, in suits at common law where the value is in controversy shall exceed $20. This is how it was originally written, guys, so it's changed since then. At the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in a court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. Article 10 says excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. Article 11 says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Article 12 says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to the states by the Constitution, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So Article 12 was saying the powers in here were not to limit the people, but it's the power of the United States granted by the Constitution. So there you go. That's the original Bill of Rights. Now, a lot of times we talk about the amendments, and when I look through here, let me look real quick and see if it has the amendments in here. I don't think it may not, because it wasn't the original. Yep, it does. So let's go to page 816. And now we're going to talk about the amendments to the Constitution. We're 33 minutes now. I'll be finished here in just a second. These pages are sticking together. So, let's go through the constitutional amendments as they stand today, because people still have an issue with this. And to those who aren't from America and are wondering about coming to America, please don't believe what you see on television. America still will offer you a fantastic opportunity. If you want to come and help people and make the world a better place, America is still a great place to do that. So don't let the nonsense that gets posted on social media. Most people do not spend all their time on social media and on apps. Okay, most people are busy taking care of their families, doing a job that adds value to their lives and to people's lives and to their customers' lives and to their clients' lives. So most Americans are hard at work and doing good, productive things, no matter what your TikToks and X's and all that other nonsense tells you. So the amendments to the United States Constitution go as follows. The First Amendment, and I'll read through these. I think how many are listed here. It goes on for a few pages, so I may not read them at length. I may read what they are. The First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right to the people peaceably to assemble and to the petition of the government for redress of grievances. I'll say this, the press is jacked, it's trash. It used to be news was real, but now it's so left and rightist, it's so just driving people apart. Remember what we read in the Bible, the things that God hates? Remember that? It's exactly what the press does, and they do it wholesale. It used to be you'd have the news and you'd learn facts. That's not the case anymore in America. And used to be also the press actually found out the dirty deeds of people and publicized it to get rid of them. Now they just get paid by them. Amendment 2 is a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the Second Amendment. And it's my viewpoint that all of this foot fungus that goes into office and tries to limit the Constitution or attack the amendments of the Constitution, in my mind, all of that is treason, and that foot fungus belongs in jail. Okay? Amendment 3 is no soldier shall in a time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Amendment 4 says, the right of the people to be secure in their possessions, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, the persons or things to be seized. I've mentioned the Patriot Act, which is garbage. It beats the mess out of the Fourth Amendment. Amendment 5 is no person shall be held to answer for capital otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment of indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia or when actual service, time of war, public or danger. Nor shall a person be subject for the same offense twice, that's double jeopardy, put in jeopardy for life or limb, nor shall he be compelled by any criminal case to witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken from public without just compensation. The Sixth Amendment is, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which the district shall have been previously ascertained by the law and informed of the nature of the cause of the accusation. Amendment 7 is, in suits of common law where the value is in controversy shall exceed $20, the right to trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in a court of the United States, and according to rules of common law. Amendment 8 says, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Amendment 9 says, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Amendment 10 says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor provided to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So the Constitution is what gives the government law. It's not the other way around. It doesn't limit people, it limits the government. Amendment 11 is, and this was passed by Congress March 4th, 1794, and it was ratified February 7th of 1795. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by the citizens of another state or by the citizen or subject of any foreign state. Amendment 12 says, this was ratified on June 15th of 1804. It was passed in Congress December 9th, 1803. A portion of Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution was superseded. The 12th Amendment. The elections The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for the president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person they voted for as president. It goes on through the distinct ballots around voting for president and vice president. Amendment 13 is passed by Congress in January 31st of 1865, ratified December 6th of 1865. And it says a portion of Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution was superseded by the 13th Amendment. And the 13th Amendment says this: neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. I think the biggest weakness of the United States currently is that we have not been pushing that Amendment 13 across the world. Right now, sexual slavery is on the rise. There are more slaves now than at any time in human history, including child labor and sexual slavery. Okay, Congress shall have power to enforce the article by appropriate legislation. That's Section 2 of Amendment 13. Amendment 14 says, and this was passed by Congress June 13, 1866, and ratified July 9, 1868. The Constitution was modified by Section 11 of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment is multiple sections. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2 says representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. So it's basically saying, based on population, you had the certain amount. Counting a whole number of persons in each state, including Indians that are not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President or Vice President of the United States, representatives of Congress, executive or judicial officers of the state, or members of the legislature thereof, is denied any male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age, and citizens of the United States in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or any other crime. So basically, any male over 21 years of age can vote unless they are a criminal or felon. Section 3 says no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of a president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who is having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of a state legislature or as an executive judicial of any other state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellions against the same, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof, but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each, remove such disability. So basically, they can vote a criminal, a rebellious person qualified to run for one of those positions. Section 4 says the validity of public debt of the United States is authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services suppressing insurrection and rebellion. This shall not be questioned, but under the United States, nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Section 5 under the 14th Amendment says Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Amendment 15, passed by Congress February 26 of 1869, ratified February 3rd of 1870. Section 1 says, the right of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So Section 1 of Amendment 15 gave all males the right to vote, whether they were previously a slave or not. Section 2 said the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 16 rather said, was passed by Congress July 2nd, 1909, ratified the 3rd of 1913. Is modified by the 16th Amendment. It says the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes. This is where income tax came from whatever source derived, without apportionment along several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. Amendment 17, ratified on April 8 of 1913, says the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state. At this point, the population had grown to the point that they couldn't have as many as what the previous said. So the Senate of each United States each state of the United States has 2 senators elected by the people for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislators. When vacancies happen in the representation of the state of the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. The legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be construed as an offer or as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes a valid part of the Constitution. And in this one is where they should have limited these people and said you can only run 2 terms, but they didn't. Amendment 18 says, after 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the importation of or the exportation of from the United States of all territory, the jurisdiction thereof, beverages, purposes are hereby prohibited. That was when they banned alcohol. The section 1 underneath that says the Congress of several states have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Section 3 says shall be inoperative. The article shall be inoperative unless it shall be ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures. The states have provided in the Constitution within 7 years of the date of submission hereof by the states of Congress. Amendment 19 says the right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States by any state on account of sex. So that's where women got the right to vote. That was August 18th of 1920. And we'll keep going. Amendment 20 says, the Constitution was modified. Section 2 of the amendment, in addition to the portion of the 12th Amendment, was superseded. Terms of the President and Vice President shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of senators and representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January of the years of which their terms have ended. Okay, the Congress shall assemble at least once in every year. Such a meeting should be at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall, by law, pick a different day. If at the time affixed at the beginning of the term of President, the Vice President-elect shall have died, the Vice President-select shall become President. If the President have not been chosen before the fixing of this term, the President-elect have failed to qualify, then the Vice President-elect shall act as President until a President shall have qualified. And the Congress made by law, wherein neither the President-elect nor Vice President-elect shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as President. So this just proves politicians are always bad. I mean, this is saying if your Vice President's not able to run, then people have to be appointed to run that until it's covered. Section 4 says the Congress may provide for the case of death for any persons for whom the House of Representatives may choose. House of Representatives may choose President whenever the right choice shall have devolved upon them. And from the case of death of any persons from whom the Senate may choose a Vice President, wherever the right choice may have devolved upon them. Section 5 says Section 1 and 2 all take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. And it has one more section that says the article shall be inoperative unless it has been ratified as an amendment, which it has because it's there. All right, Amendment 21. This was ratified December 5th of 1933. The 18th Article Amendment of the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. The transportation of importation in any state, territory, possession of the United States, delivery therein, intoxicating liquors, the violation of laws thereof are hereby prohibited. So basically, they repealed the anti-liquor law. Amendment 22. No person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. This is when they put the limitations on the office of president for more than 2 years. It says, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president no more than once. So basically, if you were made president because someone died or was impeached and you held 2 years of their term, you can only run one more term because you're not going to get more than 8 years. So if you were in 2 years and then you ran a first term, you'd be at 6, and then you ran a second term, you'd be at 10. That's too much. You get 8 years or less as president. That is Article 22. 23 is ratified on March 29th of 1961. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint such manner as Congress may direct. A number of electors of president and vice president equal to the number of senators and representatives in Congress, which the district should be entitled to as if it were a state. But no more than least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered for the purposes of election of president and vice president to electors appointed by the state. And they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided to the 12th Article of Amendment. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 24 was ratified on January 23rd of 64. It's the right of citizens in the United States to vote at any primary or election for president or vice president, for electors of president or vice president, or for the senator or representatives in Congress. It shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state for any reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. So basically, you could lose your right to vote based on taxes, which is a governmental nonsensical thing, right? So that then repealed that. Amendment 25 was ratified on February 10th of 67. It says, in the case of the removal of president from the office or his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who can take office upon confirmation by the majority of both houses of Congress. Whenever a president transmits the president pro tempore of the Senate and Speaker of the House is written in declaration and unable to discharge the powers of the duties of his office, then until he transmits that term a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president. So that basically means that the president is not fit and the Congress repeals him, then the acting president will be the vice president at that point. Section 4 says, whenever the vice president and the majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments of such other body as Congress may by law provide or transmit the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and the duties of office. So this is what Kamala should have done in the last 3 years when this country has not had a president because Joe Biden wasn't fit. And instead of this happening like it should have, which would have served the people and the country, they allowed him to stay in office and be a part-time whatever he is, completely illegal and against the Constitution. And they plotted on that and did that. Remember what we read earlier? Plotting evil things, that's evil. That's not protecting the country. He's taking the paycheck for the job, but not doing the job. That's theft. Thou shalt not steal. That was in the Ten Commandments. Amendment 26, ratified July 1st, 1971. And it says, the rights of the citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged in the United States by Senate account of age. So they took the voting age from 21 to 18. The Congress has the power to enforce that. And the final amendment here is the 27th, and it was ratified in May of 1992. And it said, no law varying the compensation for the services of senators and representatives shall take effect until election of representatives have intervened. There's been a few more amendments since then. There was one that says no law can be written that limits the power of the people, but does not limit the Congress. All right, so it's a longer video. We're almost an hour here, 54 minutes and 50 seconds at the point of looking there. Here's the point that I want to make. You can decide how you want to live. You can decide if you want to be contrarian, or you can decide if you want to be wise. Here's the point. We've got 100 years maybe. Okay, and with the toxins that are being put in our food and our water, it's coming down to like 75 or 76 years. So you've got 76 years on the planet. The first 25, you're figuring out who you are and where you should be. The next 25, you're really swinging and trying to have a family and doing all those things. So you should be appropriate in those times. So you raise those people up to be right. And the last 25, you're going to be able to reflect on the previous 50, if you're lucky to get that last 25. I think that for unity's sake, people that are in that last 25, so if you're beyond 50, your goal in life should be unity. Your goal in life should be, how can we impact the world to have a bigger work going forward that is for God, not for me? And if our country was doing that still, we'd be a much better place. So unity is easy if people would just shut up and listen. Those documents that I read today and those quotes that I read today, the whole world is regulated by those thoughts. The whole world. And so we have a front row seat in that. And we can either be leaders of the world and have people look at us and say, we want to be better, we want to be like them, or we can continue the nonsensical infighting to decide which foot fungus is more appealing. If you like subject matter such as this, please like, please subscribe, please share. I'm Ben. Be good.